All right, let's talk about a new way to tackle those huge, messy challenges. The ones that seem totally impossible to solve. Have you ever been in this situation? A brilliant new technology or process gets rolled out, everyone's super excited, but then, a few months down the line, it's a total mess. People aren't using it, it's actually creating new problems, and no one can figure out why the so-called perfect plan just fell apart. And that right there, that's the heart of the issue. We get so focused on this shiny new tool, we completely forget to think about how people are going to interact with it. We forget we're not just swapping out a piece of software. We're changing an entire system. So why does this keep happening? Let's dig into the kind of problems we're really dealing with here. You see, a lot of these challenges aren't simple puzzles with one right answer. Experts call them wicked problems. And that's a great name for them, because these are issues where you might not even be sure what the problem is, let alone the solution. Think about something like fixing healthcare access. There are just a million moving parts, and everyone wants something different. And this really gets to the core of why so many plans go sideways. The problems aren't just about technology, and they're not just about people. They're what we call socio-technical. The social part and the technical part are completely tangled up together. When you bring in a new piece of tech, you're not just changing a tool, you're changing how people work, what their jobs are, maybe even the whole company culture. And if you ignore those ripple effects, well, your great idea is probably going to crash and burn.
Okay, so to stop this from happening, we need a whole new way of looking at our work systems. We need a framework that kind of forces us to see all the interconnected pieces at the same time.
A socio-technical system is pretty much what it sounds like, right? It's the social stuff, people, culture, roles, and the technical stuff, tools, tech, infrastructure, all mixed together. The key thing to remember is that the people and their skills are just as critical as the software and the servers. You just can't try to fix one without thinking about the other. And there's actually a really powerful way to visualize this. It's called the socio-technical hexagon. It's a simple model that shows that any work system is made up of 6 core interconnected parts. It's like a web. You pull on one string and the whole thing moves. So let's take a quick look. You've got your main goals and vision. Then you've got the actual processes and work practices. Of course, there's the technology and tools. Then the physical infrastructure, the actual buildings and layout. Crucially, you have the people with all their skills and attitudes. And finally, you've got culture, the unwritten rules and beliefs. See how it all connects? It's so obvious once you see it laid out like this. If you introduce new technology, you have to ask, what does that do to the people? Do they need new skills? And what about the processes? This hexagon makes you ask all those super important questions. Okay, that's the theory. It makes sense. But how do you actually do this? How do you put this kind of thinking into practice?
Well, that is where something called the System Scenarios Tool, or SST for short, comes in. It's a really practical, hands-on workshop that helps teams get together and design their entire work system, not just the tech part. The whole idea behind the SST is that the way we work right now isn't an accident. It's the result of a ton of choices. Some of those choices were deliberate, for sure, but a lot of them, well, they were unconscious, or they were made so long ago that nobody even remembers why we do things this way. What the SST does is drag all those hidden choices out into the light so we can finally look at them and decide if they still make sense.
So, how does it work? Well, the process is built around a really simple but really powerful idea.
The workshop basically follows 6 main steps, and it all starts with getting the right people in the room. I mean everyone, from the big bosses to the people on the front lines. First, you agree on what you're actually looking at. Then you gather a bunch of data to figure out how things work right now. That's the as-is part. Once everyone understands the present, you can start brainstorming what the future could look like, the to-be scenarios. And then finally, you make some choices and come up with a real action plan.
So really, it all boils down to 2 things. First, taking a really honest look at how things work today, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We call that analyzing the as-is. Then it's about getting creative and imagining better ways things could work. And that's designing the to-be. I know this might still sound a little abstract, so let's check out a fantastic real-world example of this tool in action. It really brings it to life. Okay, so picture this, a diabetes clinic in the UK's National Health Service. They were running a small trial for telehealth, right? They gave about 40 patients some equipment to monitor their health from home. But they realized pretty quickly that this exact model just wasn't going to work if they tried to scale it up. It was a classic wicked problem. So they decided to try the SST. And wow, the results were incredible. Just look at this breakdown.
The as-is system, the original plan, had the clinic owning all this one-size-fits-all tech, and it created a massive new workload for the clinicians. But check out one of the 2B scenarios they came up with. The whole vision changed. It became a patient-driven market where people could buy their own recommended gear. And this didn't just change the tech. Look at the people part. The suppliers would train the patients, and patients would manage their own health more. The result? The clinician's workload could actually go down. Now that is systems thinking right there.
So what's the big takeaway here? Let's bring it back home to our own workplaces.
This quote just nails it. The real magic of a tool like the SST is that it basically democratizes design. It takes the power to shape how work gets done away from just a few people at the top, and it gives it to the folks who are actually in the system every single day. It lets them go from being just cogs in a machine to being the architects of that machine.
And you know what makes this so great? It's how accessible it is. This isn't some super expensive, complicated piece of software you need a team of consultants to run. Nope. It's a low-cost, flexible process that pretty much anyone can use. The only thing you really need is to get the right people in a room, ready to talk, listen, and, build something better together. So, I want to leave you with this question to think about. What about your own team, your own organization? What are those hidden rules, those old processes, the assumptions that everyone just kind of accepts as the way things are? What do you think could happen if you and everyone you work with could actually become the architects of your own system?